I think it's always a really good moment in rehearsal if somebody melts down and behaves badly. I think that can be good for the rehearsal. I don't think it has to be about keeping it all okay. And that's because they're in the middle of a very demanding and intense thing, and so they go through it. And same, not for the director. The director really can't be in that place. The director has to be able to help, but the director can't cannot let people live in an illusion that it's all great. It has to be in a, clearly evaluating and unfolding, and as it unfolds, the deeper logic emerges, and you start to understand it, and that's harrowing for everybody.
I would also say, just in terms of adjustments and text changes, and you had sort of an adverse relationship to the word cheerleading. To me, it's actually about coming truthfully to the table with actors, because I think in this country there's a kind of babying of the actor, which I think is the worst way of working. And I feel like the most important way is to say to them, okay, this is the play. We've all been working on it for 4 weeks. We realized that when we do this, the audience isn't with us. We're going to make this change here. They'll be on board if it's a good idea, in my view. Like, I've never had an idea where, like, I know this will work, and them not be on board. It's the idea where I'm like, I don't really know. You want to try it? That's, and even that, I feel like it's honesty. It's like, listen, we have no idea what point B is supposed to be. We have to get to C. We know A, and B's a mess. That kind of honesty, I think, allows them to feel safe in the room. I think when you go in and say, we're going to make these decisions and you're just going to do them, I think that's when they start to balk.
And I'd love to kind of hear what you thought as someone who has created text and then has to also interpret it in that way, because the back and forth and the push and the pull with the writer, which ultimately is the blueprint that we're all sort of trying to serve in some way. And I think the more time one spends around that, again, being very subjective about it, if I can try to hone in on that and spend enough time there before the design process is even, months away or what have you, going in and trying to figure out what the best space to play this particular, this moment is, sometimes will appear to me. But a lot of times, as those things start to reveal themselves, it ultimately, for me, there's something that the writer said that I just find myself going back to. And I think that's why I haven't really found anything quite that is an experience like hearing a new scene for the first time or hearing a new song for the first time. When you're around that, that juice is something that I feel so responsible and obligated to try to serve. So, being someone that, and all of you guys have done it in various times too, I'm a bad enough writer to understand and appreciate writing, and I've written enough terrible things to be like, oh, that was terrible, like, I really admire you for doing this. But, when you assemble text or when you're, writing, who helps you with that dialogue?
That's a good question. I have by now a group of dramaturgs that work with me that are able to ask those kind of questions. We all say that directing is the loneliest job. But I think when you're writing and directing, it really becomes lonely because it's you're dreaming up the entire thing. So it's really important. I also, because I have a theater company, I have really learned how to bring actors into dramaturgical conversations in a way that they become owners of the story. And that becomes incredibly helpful. Because one of my biggest complaints about how we do theater in America is that we underuse actors. And I don't mean that just because so many actors are out of work so often, but even when we have them in the rehearsal room. One of the joys of working on 33 Variations was that I said, this is where the story is going. And then we would improvise, and I would go home and I would, write, and I would bring it back. And then the actor, if they've been working on the play for a while, they can say, oh, my characters at this moment, that doesn't feel right. And their wisdom, it's not just intellectual wisdom, it's something that as actors they have experienced in every cell of their bodies. And they become kind of the best dramaturgs that you can have. So I don't know. I think that's how having a theater company really helped. In that I try to make everybody become a part dramaturg.
I was talking to Kate beforehand. I'm working on a project that's coming up in the fall, and had all the designs. Everything had to be in very early. And yes, 2 days ago I was going through all the music, and I think it could all be wrong. And so I'm completely powered by unbelievable anxiety and fear over the entire project, which I think people underestimate how much of that is there. When and the only really good thing a director does is mask their anxiety better than other people. and they sit on it really well. And they, like, you can never, in a good director, you can never tell how completely, unbelievably overwhelmed and terrified they are at any moment. And they seem like completely cool, and that's the job.
Yeah.
So.
And was that realization brought about by just sort of your thought process about it, or by?
No, I always do this process when I'm working. It's an opera that I'm doing, where I work through it with a friend of mine who takes me through the music, and he knows his music very well, and I don't know music so well, so I want to learn it. And in going through it, the more he talked, the more I thought, oh my God, I'm completely screwed. But by the second day of doing it, it was actually getting a little better. Okay. So, you know. So I'm just hoping that it's sort of more or less in place. I think it's a good approach, but you're always sitting on top of that thing where you're like, maybe not this time. Just a little.
But I also have had the experience where I feel like I've made a bunch of design decisions, and then the play really changes, and all of a sudden you have a set that is at the last scene took place on a boat, and now it's like in Africa, and you're like, what? Well, but I have a boat. I built a boat. Like, what do we do with the boat? And then you're like, okay, and I think that's, it can be really exciting because you say, well, this is the better choice, this is the bigger choice, let's move forward in this way, and also you're totally screwed,